Good morning, Year 8. Apologies, I can't be in your lesson this morning. A member of my household had to have a COVID test yesterday, and therefore I've just got to stay at home until that result comes through. Hopefully I'll be back in by the end of the week. So, we looked at tribes last lesson, and you were looking at 4 different tribes, and you did some research on different tribes and popped them in your books. Do you remember that I've also said a homework? It's on Google Classroom. All the instructions are on there. It's due in for next Monday, so this coming Monday. And it was for you to research a particular tribe and to produce an A4 information poster about them. So I thought I'd record a little bit of this lesson today, just to help guide the lesson and to leave some instructions. There's also a cover teacher in the lesson who will press pause at different times during the lesson, and we'll do some class reading with you to help you answer the questions. So whilst I'm talking, if you could write the title down, Should We Leave Uncontacted Tribes Alone? And if you could write the date down. Your books, as I'm sure you know, if you haven't found them already, are in the filing cabinet next to my desk. You don't need to write the subheading quick quiz, because we're not going to do the quick quiz. So, last lesson we actually discussed about COVID-19 and whether we thought it could reach any of these remote tribes, and we decided that it possibly couldn't. Well, there was an article in The Guardian this week that actually showed that COVID-19 has even reached some of these tribes. So there are contacted tribes and uncontacted tribes. So this is a recently contacted tribe. Now this tribe's actually been in contact with the outside world since the late 1980s, but they still live in relative protected isolation, but they do have some contact with the outside world. And even these people with minimal contact with the outside world, COVID has even spread to their area. And I believe 6, it said in the article, it says there on the headline, 6 cases has actually spread. Now that's just phenomenal. It tells you just how dangerous this pandemic is. And if you go on to do geography at A-level or university, you can study something called the geography of disease, which looks at the reasons why disease spreads around the world. And so COVID in particular is a really interesting one because it affected rich countries first, then poor countries, and it's now even reaching to these far-flung areas of the world. There's this video actually about coronavirus and the latest threat to the Amazon tribes. I've put the YouTube link for your teacher to watch it with you. It's obviously in a foreign language, so it's subtitled, but it gives a good overview of coronavirus and how it's affecting this Amazon tribe. But more importantly, it goes into a lot more detail actually about how the Brazilian government are currently posing a threat to indigenous people. Remember, indigenous means people who were originally from that land. So it's a good introduction to this lesson. So if you press pause on my video and then watch that YouTube video and then come back to me. Okay, whoops, I'll let that play through there. So at the end of the lesson, I want you to be able to tell me whether or not we should leave uncontacted tribes alone. That's what I'd like you to be able to form an opinion on. So the first task, if I can just get this slide to move on. Oh, sorry, my computer's just decided to freeze. Yeah, my computer decided to break for a moment then. So let's just have a quick look at how many uncontacted tribes there are around the world. So this means tribes that we know about, but we have not established contact with. So we deliberately try and protect them from external contact. So in the Amazon region, there are about 100. We see here, there's 1 in Paraguay, 1 in India, and 10 in Papua New Guinea there. So there's still a fairly large number. I find it amazing. The number of people, even in today's globalized world where we've gone to the moon and we've gone to space, there are still people on our planet who have no contact with the outside world and I suppose our Western way of life, which I just find fascinating. I find it interesting, and I think it's a really good thing as well. So I'm going to ask you to answer these questions in your book in full sentences. So to enable you to answer these questions, there's an article which your cover teacher will hand out to you about human safaris. And what the article talks about is how the tourist industry and different tour operators are now trying to sell holidays or sell tours where you can come into contact with some of these tribes. This is obviously something that charities and people protecting these tribes don't want to happen. They see it very invasive, almost like you're going to look at animals in a zoo. Really, it's got certain quite moral considerations to think about whether it's the right thing or not to do. So if you read through that article with your teacher and answer these questions in your book in full sentences. So full sentence means, so let's do an example number 1. What are human safaris? Human safaris are, and then you write the answer. So if you press pause now, and the teacher will read through the article. Okay, so hopefully you've completed that task, you've read the article, you've managed to answer some of those questions. I think it's important to have a look at different ways these tribes are under threat. So one way already we've seen from that article you read is from tourism. So tourists coming to have a look at the areas. Obviously, we're all interested. I'm interested in what's going on in these tribes. It's fascinating. So you can understand why tourists are interested, but that poses a threat to their way of life. There are other threats to their way of life as well. Your teacher has a worksheet, an article which goes through different threats to uncontacted tribes. And in fact, I can probably open it up on here. That's my cover work. Oh, it's disappeared from my screen. But there's an article. In fact, let's have a look if it's on Google Classroom. Here we go, Rainforest Tribes. So if you go to your Google Classroom, all this work is there. Here we go, threats to uncontacted tribes. If you have a look at this worksheet, it goes through some of the different threats to their way of life. It speaks about loggers and how loggers in industries who actually go and cut down the trees for furniture, etc. Cattle ranchers, so that's people who destroy areas of the rainforest in order to have cattle and sell beef, etc. Missionaries, colonists. Apologies, my computer's running a little bit slow. Road building's a real threat to the rainforest in Brazil. What they're trying to do, and obviously to be able to open up parts of the rainforest to allow industries, they build great big roads through it. When you build roads through it, parts of the rainforest that weren't accessible before suddenly become very, very accessible. And so people who were once protected because they were so isolated are no longer so. So what I'd like you to do is to read through this sheet with your teacher and to complete the table on the PowerPoint here. So you need to tell me in this column 3 factors that are a threat, how this factor has led to people being in contact with the tribe and the effect of the contact on the tribe. If you're struggling to categorize the information into those 3 boxes, you're also welcome to just write a subheading of the threat. So for example, logging, and then write a couple of lines about logging. And then the next threat might be disease, and then tell me a couple of things about disease. I will leave you there, but if you have time at the end of the lesson, if you manage to get a couple of these down, I think it'd be interesting for you to discuss with your partner whether or not you think we should leave uncontacted tribes alone. So you may feel that perhaps the young people in those tribes, perhaps they deserve the right to see what life is like outside of the tribe. Perhaps they deserve the right to see what the internet is and what modern medicine can do and all the various opportunities that might present to them outside of that tribe. But you may also feel that actually these people have lived in isolation very, very happily for a long, long time, and therefore we should perhaps leave them alone and let them to carry on their lives without interfering. It's an interesting question. There's pluses and minuses on both sides. Perhaps that's something you can discuss, and then we can discuss it when I'm back in school, hopefully next week. Thank you very much.